right. So last month, after going on and on about LangChain and Generative AGI, you think, oh, he's just around the corner. He's going to crack intelligence. He'll tell us all about it next month. Well, as is the case oftentimes in my life, something shiny comes along and I change direction a little bit. So I was getting my hands dirty with LangChain, figuring out how to do directed cognition. And then I looked back at the ChatGPT mobile app and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I had my own version of the ChatGPT mobile app that connected to my personal generative AI, and wouldn't that be awesome? And then I remembered a few years ago that there was this development platform called Flutter, write once, run anywhere, what Java promised but then failed at. I said, what's an excuse to kind of get back into it? So I'm like, oh, it'll just take me a weekend. I'll get in there and I'll write a quick app and we'll be good to go. So that's how we landed on Flutter this month. So I started working through the process, and I'm gonna I'll share with you everything that kind of led up to it in case anyone else is interested. And then at some point, my attention shifted again. I'm not ADHD, I like shiny things. And on campus in my job, I'm in operations for beach building services. We have a platform to manage our work order tickets. And we have been waiting for the vendor to produce a mobile app for 5 years. And it's always just around the corner. And the weekend after I started working on my personal ChatGPT app, I got frustrated, or a light bulb went off in my head. I said, hey, wait a minute, writing apps isn't that hard. Why don't I get permission to burn some amount of hours for feasibility on writing our own mobile app with our own features and our own business logic, just to see A, if it's possible, and B, what the amount of effort it would be to get it done. And 20 hours of work and personal time later, because it was so much fun to do, we've proven not only can we do it, we can do it cost effectively, we'll own the business logic, it's not that hard to maintain. So we'll probably, on our work side, we'll authorize funding for the data connector for our work order ticket system, and then probably 80 to 120 hours, we'll have a fully fledged mobile app for our technicians that works exactly the way that they want to, written in Flutter. We'll have an Android app available. There will be a web app. The possibility exists for us to generate an iOS app, because all of our techs, we use iPhones. Those are our main work phones. And so far, aside from taking ownership of it from this point forward, there's been zero downside. So that is why this month's talk is Flutter. Why Flutter? So just to quickly bebop around a little bit, this is a screenshot of the mobile time card portion of our app that we put together in like 10 hours, and 3/4 of that was figuring out how to do it the first time. I'm not claiming this is the prettiest implementation, but luckily I have access to a UI UX designer that I'm going to hand the screenshot to and say, hey, make this your own. I can literally reproduce any UI that you can dream up. But yeah, so far so good. Getting back to what is Flutter? As I mentioned, Flutter is a Google-backed development platform. It, in turn, is based on the Dart programming language. And the promise is of Flutter, apps for any screen. Most of the widgets and the things that it does lends itself well to a material type style. And I'm not a web developer. I never was. I never probably will be. But looking at how you describe the UI using Flutter and Dart, it looks a lot like CSS on CSS had a stepchild with C# or some other type language. And And like once you get the gist of it, it's pretty easy to iterate quickly on it. There are a lot of awesome things built into the Flutter ecosystem. I'm using it. It will partner up really well with Android Studio if you want to focus on Android apps. Wherever you install it determines which type of applications you'll be able to generate. So on this install on a Windows computer, it'll generate a Windows executable, it'll generate a web app, and if you have Android Studio installed, it will generate an Android APK, an Android application as well. On Linux, it generates a Linux app, and if on a Mac, you'll be able to generate code for an iOS app. So pretty darn cool. In addition, coding in Flutter and Dart on VS Code is a dream. It's a fully featured IDE with autocomplete and predictive and great documentation, and right-click brings you into the source code for anything anything you're trying to use. It also supports something called hot reload. So anyone who's written any kind of code, you know the normal cycle is you write the code, then you compile it, then you plop it where you want to run it, and then you run it, and then you see if you get any errors, right? In Flutter and Dart, it supports something called hot reload. So as soon as you hit save from, in your debugging development environment, as soon as you hit save, it attempts to compile the code. If it's able to compile it, it hot reloads the code into your destination for web or Android, or I'm assuming iOS, and also Windows and Linux. So it's one of those things like, okay, well, it's awesome because you can iterate really quickly. And when we go through this talk, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I'm a Flutter developer now. And I was trying to figure out, like, well, why are we talking about this? I wanted to give you a general familiarity with the platform and what its capabilities are. The sky's the limit, something to keep in the back of your head. If you ever need to write a web app or an Android app, this would be, I think, a great option for you. It's supported by Google. I know sometimes Google will drop projects at the drop of a hat, but this is pretty well established. And just from working with it over the past couple of weeks, it is a joy to work with overall. From autocomplete and the documentation, the way the IDE works with it makes it very easy to iterate and learn and figure out. And the third piece of this point is there are thousands, tens of thousands of hours of YouTube videos describing every aspect of the language, how to use it, the features. So it's very easy to immerse yourself quickly to get the hang of the language, which leads to the third piece right here. Generative AI has changed everything from a development perspective. It's one of those things where you hear about it and then you kind of give it a go and you're like, wow, this is cool. If you're anything like me before this point, if I was going into a new language, I spend an hour or two on YouTube looking for the hello world, to get your bearings about how everything fits together. And then from that point forward, what wasn't covered in the IDE would be a Google search for Stack Overflow to figure it out. So I want to make this text bold in this widget. How do you do that? Hit Google. Flutter told, if your Google flu is strong and you hit the right keywords, you'll find it relatively quickly. And that's how iteration happened. And I was a Google flu master, so I felt pretty quick at picking this stuff up. Generative AI has changed the whole game. Whether you have set up a free account at chat.openai.com for free access to ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, or you pay the $20 a month for access to GPT-4. ChatGPT 3.5 is smarter for development than anything that you could run locally. And I've tried a couple of different local models, and whatever their magic is, personally, I think they're using mystery of experts, that their coding expert is probably in the 20 to 30 billion parameter range, but it's never been confirmed. And then if you want access to a veteran programmer in any language situation you want, GPT-4 has got your back. So I'll bounce back and forth between the two of those. Occasionally I'll bounce some queries off of like Mistral 7B just to see the personal ones, the ones you run locally, hallucinate a lot more. They're smaller and not as focused. They don't have the magic that ChatGPT does from a coding perspective. And on top of that, there's always GitHub Copilot. So $10 a month. I'm sorry I didn't look up beforehand to see what the back end is for that. I would imagine they transitioned it over to ChatGPT because of their stake in, and Microsoft's stake in OpenAI, and the fact that Microsoft bought GitHub, but I'm not sure about that. I signed up for a trial, and when you turn it on, you have access to a chat window, and then it looks at your code base as you're writing, and if it sees a pattern, it'll suggest a code completion. And it went from a gimmick to a time saver in like 1 second flat. It's not always right. It does hallucinate a little bit, but between it seeing the pattern of what you're attempting to do, to autocomplete a piece of the form, you can copy and paste, you can select and copy pieces of code and paste it into GitHub Copilot chat and ask it a question. And I'm sorry, you'll select it, and then in chat you'll ask some question about the code, and it will respond at about the same level of expertise as 3.5 Turbo.
You can also put in the comments, right, what you want.
And yes,
that's my
and that's the third thing, is that to give it a hint of what you're looking for, you can type in a comment, say, make this text bold, 20-point font, white, and then a second later, it'll suggest an autocomplete to do exactly that. Now, from where I'm personally coming from, I'm a code tradesman. I dabble, I get as deep as I can get the job done. I'm not a subject matter expert in any particular language, but when I go in, I immerse myself as much as possible. I'm sure many of you are the same way. So if you have an understanding of the fundamentals of development, meaning you kind of get how code works together, between ChatGPT and Copilot, it'll easily make you 10 times more productive. Possibly even more. This isn't an exaggeration. Just adding up the time from using these new tools, from doing a search, figuring out the keywords, figuring out how to apply it. It's like having a veteran programmer sitting right behind you with infinite patience, and it'll steer you the right direction the right way. To give you a more concrete version of that, this mobile app that Ben and I are working on, it required me to create and expose a REST API against a local copy of our work order ticket database. I think I back up every day and we do reports with it. Now, I dabbled in C#. I kind of know how to consume REST API. This is not my wheelhouse at all. Here's exactly what I did to create a REST API endpoint for everything necessary to support this user interface. Downloaded and installed Visual Studio with the web components in it. I did a quick Google search just to get my bearings. I'm like, I want to create a REST API. And it's like, oh, go to new project, select this, give it a name, and you've got like a hello world REST API project that doesn't do anything, right? And so the tutorial's like, here's, if you want to expose data, you have to write a class that's a data model. And so I did that, and I ended up copying and pasting the source code into ChatGPT and saying, hey, how would I do X? And it's like, hey, buddy, no problem. All you have to do is A, B, C, D, and here's the new source code. So we were pair programming. And over the course of, I would say several hours, maybe 4 tops between 2 and 4 hours, I created 4 or 5 REST API endpoints parameterized in the same flavor as the production endpoints will behave when we pay for the licensing. And then the same thing for the UI. 20, 40 times faster than if I had to figure it out on my own, and at least 10 times faster on the UX side. So I think my main goal for this talk is to give you an introduction to the programming environment, share with you everything that allowed me to get my bearings, and to show you how pair programming with these other tools will get you for me to be way faster than the old standard, which was Google search. And yeah, one of the things was, it just stuck in my head, was, you guys have all seen the memes, like only old people use Facebook and only old people use texting. So as a joke, I put in only old people use Stack Overflow and Google anymore.
We're all
That
old.
hurts.
I guess.
I know, that's the
I thought
challenge.
those were those guys.
And so to kind of, with all this as a background to kick this off, I wrote this outline to kind of give me a cadence and how I wanted to approach it. And then I'm like, well, you know what, ChatGPT, write me a talk outline for a 1-hour talk. Can I get rid of this? Introducing the Flutter application development and including utilization of GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT. No problem, buddy. Here's how we go. And I've got this pasted off to the side. And not replace us yet, but it would be silly of me to not take advantage of this as an extra tool, right? Because last week I have one-on-ones with my boss, awesome boss, very good environment, and I wasn't sure how much of this ChatGPT was on his radar as a director of FM operations. And so that morning I'm like, hey, I'm gonna grab a meeting room because I've got some stuff I want to show you on the screen. And I said, I don't mean to overstate it, but I'm probably going to blow your mind on it. He's like, oh, all right. So my one more thing was just giving them a walkthrough of ChatGPT, some of the projected impacts, everywhere else, letting them know that I don't see any immediate impacts to our operations, but I'll keep an eye out. We're heavily involved in stuff. And he had mentioned that his wife had recently changed jobs. She had a micromanager. The dean of the college was a micromanaging yahoo, and so she changed jobs. So to kind of give him as you can see, I do it. I use this a lot. What is that? Oh, here we go.
Oh, these are your records.
Yeah. So
Previous
at
talk.
so to show him, nope, that wasn't it. Oh yeah, no, this is part of the demonstration.
Is this what you're in right now on the web? Is that the free ChatGPT?
Yeah.
The web portal.
Yeah. So the ChatGPT, they've got a paid version and a free version. I tend to try the free version first, and it's been amazing. So to kind of start the conversation up, I asked ChatGPT to write a Sparky resignation letter to my college of business dean, who micromanages my every move and has killed the collaboration spirit of my department, right? And his jaw dropped. We'll just quickly go through this. It's perfect.
Your exceptional leadership. Oh, that's a long one.
Yeah.
Is it kind of sarcastic?
Oh yeah. Very
Condolences
snarky.
to those.
Snarky. Oh, you said snarky.
Yeah.
So it did what you wanted.
Yep. And so on campus, we do have an AI steering committee that does meet periodically. It's more politics than application, so I don't have anything to do with that. But it's definitely on the campus's radar from a bunch of different perspectives. And like I keep saying, I don't know what the next 3 years are gonna look like. It's not, as this continues to improve, people are finding new applications, new ways to partner with the technology, and everything that we're gonna chat about today doesn't even take into account the OpenAI Dev Day talk and all the new features that they just released. So that's gonna be my homework for this weekend.
They released the new.
Yeah, there's now 4.0 Turbo.
Yeah, the letter.
GPTs, yeah, the API now supports text-to-speech and speech-to-text
And the visual and stuff too.
Yeah.
Right, you probably got that letter I got this letter from OpenAI.
Yeah.
Saying we have all these things, the 4 Turbo and the larger, the standard length is now 16K. And
They quadrupled the links, yeah.
And it's like really cheap to use the old one, or they lower the prices. It's like crazy.
Yeah, personally, I think they would be silly for not doing this. I would hope that they're using like a GPT-2 4-bit quantization for portions of it. It's impossible to tell on this side.
Yeah, just a quick question. So let's say you're an Arduino I. Okay, so you're writing some code in C++. How does ChatGPT stare over your shoulder? Are you copying and pasting from the I environment into ChatGPT?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that you would approach that. First off, by now, I hope you've moved your Arduino development to Visual Studio Code. But if you have
Arduino IDE.
if you're using Arduino IDE with no syntax highlighting and no autocomplete and no right-click help and none of the other fun stuff, what my workflow would be, I would copy and paste the source code into a ChatGPT window.
Okay, then it starts doing stuff, and then when you like it, you put it back in the I to compile it, and into the Arduino.
Yeah,
okay, I just wanted to get it right.
And it exactly looks like that. You copy and paste the source code in and hit enter, and then it starts bloviating about it. So you haven't asked a question yet, so you say,
okay,
stop,
I got it.
Stop, and then you ask the question.
And you could continue writing there, but then you would copy it and paste it back and down. Okay, that's just what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And regarding the making the input context 4 times the size, aside from the compute cost, right? Because it costs more to support that. Just 2 or 3 months ago, there was a paper published that described a subtle change to rope embeddings that allowed the transformer to take into account the entire context. And you probably ran into this just by using the 16K on before the talk, is that with our current best practices about the encoding and the angles for rope embeddings and stuff that I don't understand, is that for long sequence links, it tended to remember the stuff in the beginning and the stuff in the end, and it tended to ignore the stuff in the middle.
Even with the context, you're saying?
Yeah.
Even with the context.
Yeah, with the longer context sizes. I don't remember who did it. I've got the paper on my phone somewhere. Is they figured out that slightly changing one of the parameters in the rope embeddings allowed it to take into account the entire thing. And so I personally believe for the OpenAI thing, I think they've already leveraged that.
So in other words, that's why.
Yeah, so that's that was probably how they were able to suddenly offer reliable, because you can open up any context link that you want. Codeyama supports 100K context length, but
how good
it's still
is it?
limited, by.
I see. Oh, in other words, OpenAI wanted to release a good product, so they waited until they had the 16K one that was out, but it suffered from that problem.
I suspect so.
I didn't really get that. Yeah, it seemed to do a decent job at those summaries that we had, even in the middle, but I'm sure those weren't that big though. It wasn't even using the whole thing.
Yeah,
Anyway, that's
where I work. I think they told us that we can't be pasting code into.
Yeah, we can't either.
Is that
Samsung doesn't allow it.
Yeah, I mean, is it safe? Or, I mean, you don't know where your code is gonna be going to.
If you ever working on some intellectual property,
yeah, intellectual
I wouldn't
property.
put any of it. This is for hobby use right now.
Yeah, the whole enterprise thing, so that is a big answer to that. If you're paying for it, there's all sorts of guarantees that they're not using it. You're
Not
saying
storing
for
it.
GitHub, or if
Yeah,
you use
pay
a
for
public API, if you're doing what you're
GPT-3.
sitting here pasting into the they're scrubbing it and.
Yeah, they can
You
use
can
that.
find it in your
It
next
says
search.
it in the EULA.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
so if you're a member of the GPT-4 $20 a month?
Oh, yeah.
So if I sign up for that, then I'm probably, then I have to read it.
Well,
That's
the-
in between, the APIs you're protected,
Oh, APIs are definitely,
and then if you're using Copilot, you're definitely protected.
because you're paying for
That,
that.
the paid one, I don't know, it's somewhere.
Oh, that's a little-
I haven't looked at it, so
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
Copilot is really secure and the API is secure because you're a paying customer, you have a relationship, they're not gonna
Yeah.
alienate you.
If you trust.
If you trust
They
them,
may
exactly.
scrub anyway and just don't use it to avoid lawsuits, or they may decide,
Yeah.
yours too small to sue us anyway, so we're gonna use it.
Yeah, so on the ChatGPT web interface, they have a toggle for chat history and training. And it's a very valid point, because that's one of the reasons, like we were talking about, Tesla and autopilot, is they're sucking all that information in to make it better. Which is great, it's a huge source, and the net good, the net positive is awesome. And that's why they've introduced a new product called ChatGPT Enterprise. So the Samsungs and the of the world, you pay some amount of money and now you have some guarantees. That's one of the guarantees. I think another one is something about liability, right, for generated code.
Yeah, they've already done that, Microsoft did it, and OpenAI. If you get sued for copyright because of something they suggested, they will cover it. So they indemnify you from that suit.
Oh, well, that's good.
Now, again, the free one, who knows?
Because there's new evidence, I think even legislation that, work that comes out of like an AI system, for instance, like DALL-E, to create, or generative AI is not copyrighted, it's not copyrightable. It is in fact in the public domain. So if you create things using that, it's all public domain, and that's.
So all software has just become the public domain because everybody's using Gen AI.
Now, I don't know about, at least for images, I don't know if it applies to, but yeah, they're saying that, if you do generative AI, if you use generative AI, you create a picture, that picture you cannot copyright that to yourself.
Yeah,
That
there's
is
some,
in the public domain, so someone else can use that picture just as well as you can. And that is one reason why there's a big effort to analyze data and determine if it came from an AI generative engine. Therefore, whoever is looking at that can say, hey, that's public, sorry.
Yeah,
This is
the next
active
couple of years
legislation.
in all areas are, and I don't know if it's good or bad that they're trying to do a better job of keeping up.
Yeah.
Or the legal
Than they were
system.
before. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to feel about it, but it seems like, I guess that, just, to me, just typing a few words and getting this great picture, it's really, can you really copyright that picture because you typed in a few words? Probably, and because of all the other things involved with that.
So before that law, DALL-E had in their terms saying, when we give you that image, you own it and it's your
Yeah,
image.
that's the thing, it changed. It used to
Yeah.
be for like, whatever, 2 months, the usual cycle of how things are changing now, that you would own that, if you're copyright, and all the artists were like, kind of like, oh, it's mine, and now they're, now they can't really do that. So it's changing rapidly.
The next couple of years is going to be very exciting.
Well,
Actually,
it's
they
like
already are. but-
Scary to probably
Yeah.
a lot of people in the creative industry, though, too, right?
All right, so I'll
Sorry.
quickly, oh no, it's a great conversation. I'm gonna quickly blow through some things to keep in the back of your head when you want to use this. The first one is the Flutter SDK. Follow the instructions exactly. They even support install under Chrome OS, which is kind of amazing. It involves downloading and installing a zip file called Flutter. You place that somewhere where you want to be able to access it, and then you add Flutter wherever it is, Flutter /bin, to your path, which differs depending on what operating system you're on. So from that point forward, you have access to the Flutter and the Dart executable.
Is it a command line or something like that?
Yeah,
Or does it have
underneath it's all CLI stuff.
Okay.
So, and when you follow the install, it'll have you run a couple of commands like Flutter Doctor, and there's some licenses to accept. So just follow the instructions exactly.
You don't have to install it or touch a registry or start menus or anything.
No, and
Portable.
yeah, so in Windows, for example, it's a zip file. So it archives to a Flutter folder. I happen to put mine at the root of my user profile in Windows. I did the same thing in Linux, I believe. And then you add the
You have to put the,
path.
you have to put the path in your environment, standard old or standard kind of development environment issues.
Yeah, and it'll tell you exactly how to just follow the instructions top to bottom, and you'll be set.
So Dart, you said Dart is the language. it's
Yeah, so
based on.
underneath it's Dart. So Dart's run natively on Android. I know on web it transcompiles it to JavaScript.
Oh.
And I can't remember for Windows and Linux and iOS if it transpiles to something else.
Like a bytecode.
Is Flutter just like a wrapper around Dart or something like that? Or
Yeah. So Flutter is built on Dart. So Flutter is the UI portion of the language, and then Dart is the underpinning. And
So Dart has a runtime then, and it runs for each of these OSs like a runtime system.
yeah,
And whether it may be like Java, like byte compile,
Exactly,
or
yeah.
it could be, it probably doesn't compile the native or might, I don't know.
yeah, that I'm not sure.
It's
I
kind
just
of
know on
irrelevant. You didn't have to worry about that.
yeah, I just know on web it transcompiles to JavaScript.
And then in Windows, you probably get an exe at the end.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yep. So if you're not already a fan, go through Visual Studio Code. Even if you're doing Arduino development, the platform IO stuff, and yeah, I wouldn't recommend it if I haven't seen the light. If you wanted a couple of minutes, you can hit me up and I'll show you exactly how I set it up. I can practically guarantee you won't go back.
I've kind of gone back at least, a little bit, because you're like, oh, this, I don't know, some sample, but it felt a little bit harder to, when you're downloading libraries and
It is,
code.
yeah, you have to put them in a different spot.
Or it just well, everything you have to get used to anyway. You have to learn, but
It is a little different, yeah.
the benefits are very high because of the autocomplete and all that.
Arduino is easier to start, the platform IO, and VS Code, if you're doing anything for big or long term, it's way better.
Yeah, if you're doing something like quick, it's like, it's hard to beat, boot up Arduino IDE, you got your three functions, your two functions, you paste and you hit upload, and you plug in, upload, and you're done. It's sort of small and compact, and the code, but if you're doing a lot in code already, then it's just like, oh, there's another plugin, another, I'm in code a lot in Microsoft Code for Python and everything else, so it's just another little add-on plugin. But yeah, I'm still not, the more hours you put into Arduino programming, the more you'll benefit from the code.
Yeah, and I guess while I wouldn't argue with that, one of my counterpoints would be is once you have autocomplete and contextual highlighting and access to help and right-click functions, like it makes learning about it so much easier than writing code in Notepad and hitting compile and trying to read it. Anyway, it's like all roads point to being awesome. So whichever one you do, but yeah, I would. If it's just a matter of a couple minutes, I'm happy to spend whatever time it takes.
Okay, I just made
All right, and so once you have the Flutter installed and you've moved over to Visual Studio Code, what you'll want to do is look for a couple of extensions. So the first one is, and the most important one, is the official Flutter extension, which allows you to do everything through the IDE that you normally have to type in through the command line. Super awesome. There's also, there's a bunch of other stuff. I haven't installed any of it yet. There's snippets, files, all kinds of fun stuff. But the main one is this. This is how you get the party started. And if you'd like to see what Copilot has to offer, they have a free like 10 or 15-day 10-day thing where you sign in, you give them your credit card to start the subscription if you like it. Go ahead and get that started, and then you can add in the 2 Copilot extensions, the main Copilot for autocomplete, and then the chat function, which allows you to select code in your code window and then have a conversation about it in a chat window.
Those are 2
to your
separate
left.
things.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll want to install both of those.
$10 a month, huh? I have friends that have already been using this for months, so.
Yeah.
Using it, but I have not wanted, I'm old. I want to get younger, so I should sign up.
Now, the one that I'm adding in at the last minute, so I'll highlight it here, so here, I'll copy and paste it into chat, is FlutterFlow. So one of the things you don't get out of the box is a WYSIWYG UI drawing tool. And in the beginning, at least, it was fun to draw things and look at the code as part of my way of learning. Okay, I don't have it signed in yet. Let's see if I can sign in real quick. So FlutterFlow.io is a web-based, this is just me doodling, is a web-based UI designer. So you can, once you get your bearings, which I'll show you next, so you understand how the language wants to work, then you know how to apply the UI elements, and you can drag and drop and set just to see how they look. And when you've done that, you can view the code to see the code that it generates. So you can develop entire applications this way. I'll be honest, after I got my bearings, I haven't really come back to this at all. But to get a feel for how everything fits together, it's certainly something worth bookmarking to, again, to help you get your bearings on how all these pieces fit together. FlutterFlow.io allows you to visually describe UIs, and then you can generate programs if that's how you roll. The next thing is on YouTube. There's hundreds of thousands of hours of video out there.
Already?
Lots of great, lots of great creators. This is the guy that I settled on because he talks with it's not an Australian, it's the other one. Sorry, I don't equate them at all. New Zealander accent. Maybe it's Australian. Don't tell him I can't tell him. He's easy to follow. He talks with a cadence and a speed that makes you feel like you're not rushed. And this guy's prolific. There's probably 100 videos. He's got ones that specialize on an element. He has a series that describes writing certain types of applications. Mitch Coco is certainly someone you want to bookmark to get your bearings with. Now, with that, he's got 2 videos that I would recommend you sit through. I don't think this is it though, hold on. One of them is a 44-minute Flutter beginner course. And he not only takes you, before you even get to the UI element,
Welcome to the Flutter beginner course.
he walks you through some basics of the Dart language. So at some point, you're going to have to pay your dues, right? You're going to have to spend some amount of time to get your bearings on the language. There's a 45-minute version of it, which you definitely want to sit through. There's also a 2-hour one. Let me see if I skip past it. Okay, I did skip past it. There's 3 links here. Ben's going to copy all of them in. These were all written within the past couple of months. There's also a 2.5 hour one, and it all depends on how quickly you're picking it up. The 2 hour are very thorough. Again, get your bearings, pay your dues. Fireship published, what was this, last year? A 12-minute boot camp. This is the one that I would start with. At the end of 12 minutes, you will understand exactly how the components fit together, and then that gives you
Flutter,
that gives you the background to absorb one of the other two, and then to start diving in. The other resources that were handy was there's a widget catalog, which is a tab that I always have open. That just, it's a nice way to scroll through to remind yourself what's available, because you don't know how you're going to write it until you know what tool you have. And this is a catalog of all of your UI tools with explainers and sample code and click through to the class description, exactly how to use it. The last bookmark that I always have open is called pub.dev. There are thousands of extensions, widgets, classes, modules, components that you can leverage that people publish to that you can use in your own package, in your own packages, or in your own projects. For example, before I got distracted multiple times, I wanted to see what OpenAI packages were available on PubDev, and it turns out like a dozen people have written various integrations with OpenAI through REST. Some of them have been upgraded more often, some of them are a little bit behind, some are more geared towards LangChain integration. I haven't seen any that support the text-to-speech API extensions that they released this week, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time. So these are most of the tabs that I have open off to the side as I'm going through it. So to kind of wrap up our whirlwind introduction to Flutter, let's get back into Visual Studio Code, and let me show you what a workflow looks like. Let's go back to the things here. So once you have everything installed and configured, there's a keyboard shortcut for this, but I can never remember what it's called. So I'm going to go to View, Control-Shift-P, of course, how silly of it. To Command Palette, and type in Flutter. And you've got some shortcuts to Flutter Upgrade to make sure that your Flutter installation is up to date. Flutter Doctor, make sure everything's installed correctly. Now, assuming we've gone through and installed the Flutter SDK and added it to our path and followed all of those instructions on this page, you can go to Flutter New Project. Uh-oh. That's disappointing. Hold on, let me retrace my steps here for a minute. There's a chance that I had Flutter installed and set up under, oh, well, let's just do it. Nope. All right. So we'll get a little bit more hands-on the Flutter install this morning. Let's go ahead and Flutter download the zip file. Actually, what else we could do? I'm gonna move over to my workstation. No. Hold on, I'm fighting with the window right now. So, we're gonna jerry this a little bit. I'm logged into my workstation in the other office over here, just to move the conversation forward with a properly installed and configured Flutter install. I'm a little embarrassed that I missed that when I was preparing yesterday, but say la vie. And then palette, Flutter new project. We'll do an application just to give us something to play with. It wants to know where you want to put your project file. And so I've got a projects folder. Let me resize this so we can see both sides. Almost there. All right. So we'll put it in projects. We'll call it RSC Hello World. And it goes through the script to create the entire project structure for you in the background. Okay. All right, so we selected a basic application, so it's got a window and it's got a counter and stuff. Once you've gone through the tutorials, you've got your bearings. Just like in most other C and C++ languages, you've got a void main. This is where the party starts. This is where everything gets kicked off. In Visual Studio Code. Hold on, my big head's getting in the way. Right there for a second. Oh, I can't see it. Right there. You're not being helpful. All right. Trying to get everything fit in the window so you can see it. All right, in the lower right-hand corner, from within this, Flutter application context, you have what you will compile for. It defaults to where you're at, so it's saying, oh, you want a Windows app. Go ahead and click here, and you can say when you hit compile and run what your destination is. Because this is on a Windows install, defaults to Windows, Chrome or Edge. And because I have the Android emulator stuff installed, the Android emulators that I have defined will also show up here. So I'm going to go ahead and select Chrome, Chrome. And so now Chrome appears down here. And I'm just going to go ahead and click compile and run. This little debug and arrow here in the upper right. And the compile and launch step takes about 20 or 30 seconds depending on the size of your app.
This is a small app, right? A simple app. The larger ones might
Probably take longer, yeah. All right, so let me go ahead and resize this a little bit. So here is our app. Let's pretend like we're developing something for.
Does it have its own web server or something?
Correct, yep. Yep, so localhost on a defined port. Because I selected a basic application, here's what it generates. Let me get this over here for a second. And this is your hello app. I'd recommend everyone run this first to get through the compile and run step. Web page.
What's that red thing in the corner say?
It says debug. Yeah, so by default there's a flag that it sets, and that's actually one of the first things that we're going to change. So Flutter app is on the right. We've got live debugging. I've got all kinds of stuff here on the left. Let's make some more room. All right. Sorry, I'm fighting with, slide my big head over there for a second. Okay. All right, so the app is running. You've got a couple of things up in the action bar on top. We can stop it. We can reload it. We can hot reload it. For a lot of your changes, you won't have to click on any of that. And that's what we're gonna wrap up this talk this morning, is as you make your changes and hit save, it'll attempt to compile and push the updated code directly to your destination. So again, iterating is very quick. If you have a syntax error, it'll be highlighted in red, and then nothing will change. So scrolling down, color schema, my home page, class home page state, widget build. So there's some pieces of the app. We have the scaffold and the app bar. Let's see if I remember where to do it. I think I can stick it here. So I remember that debug bar has the word debug in the flag. So I'm going to type in debug. Now I noticed that the IDE autocomplete doesn't support that, so that's in the wrong spot. So let's look up a little bit. Let's try up here. Now I've got an autocomplete from Copilot, but I don't have the IDE is not autocomplete for me, so it's still not in the right spot. So let's do this. Now remember, I could look it up. I could do a search, but I'm going to be super efficient about this. And let's move to with my turbo in Flutter. How do I remove that darn debug flag? I can't remember. That didn't help. Not helpful. Do I remove it during debug? There we go. All right, let's try that. Okay, I can remember where to stick it. So, all right, so in the minute we have left, let's go ahead and change something so we can at least see it work live. So we've got an app bar. The app bar has a background color. Let's go ahead and use Copilot to give us a hint. Background color. Make a liar out of me. All right. Oh, there we go. It auto select offers color.green. I'll hit tab to accept that, and we'll hit save. And there you go. So the talk was a lot less like how to be awesome in Flutter, more about the tools. Using these workflows is making me at least 10 times faster. We're going to make a time card and a work order app for our techs over the next 2 months. And eventually I'll start using my free time to write the ChatGPT app for my personal generative AI that initially got me into this.
So if you didn't use Flutter, like, what would be the traditional approach to your application?
So there are a bunch of different application frameworks, right? If you were writing it for Android and didn't give a hoot about
Just use the SDK.
Flutter and else, then Android Studio would allow you to do a native app in
Java, yeah, can learn a
in
lot.
their Java derivative, yeah. So same thing with iOS.
Do you think this makes it easier?
From where I'm sitting, it looks easier even for the Android app for me. But then on the work side, in order to get an iOS app in the hands of my techs who use iPhones, first off, I've got to buy a Mac. Not a big deal, but an extra step, right? And then we have to pay $100 a year for a developer license. At that point, I would like to assume, once all this is installed on the Mac, I hit give me a Mac app and it generates a Mac app. But you just can't give a Mac app, an iOS app to an iPhone and have them run it. It's a walled garden. They take those things rather seriously. So you have to publish it to the App Store. Normally, once you publish an app to the App Store, it has to be reviewed and approved, and then it's available for anyone, which is less optimal. If you're an enterprise customer, you can publish a private app to be made available. And I think our campuses they use an enterprise tool called Jamf. So anyways, it's not to say it's impossible, but there's a lot more hoops.
So this way you can get around all of that and just directly
Well,
create
that's,
an iOS app?
yeah, so if I don't want to go through that, I can publish this same code base as a web app, and then I can hard code a shortcut to the URL on their phones,
Right.
and it's almost the same experience.
Oh, I see.
So you don't have to make an
Yeah.
iOS native app.
Yeah,
And
so I
go through
can,
that whole.
yeah, in the
the
short
web app.
term, I can deploy the web app,
Which
and
is-
then at some point, if we see a business need for it, we can go through the.
Oh, hey, hey,
I see
made
that.
it,
So-
I did.
All right.
Long trip for you.
All right, so that wraps it up. I'm happy to share with you guys what I have to do in the next couple of months. And hopefully, if I can start focusing on ChatGPT again, I'll be able to show off my personal ChatGPT Android app. So,
Oh, one question on, well, I would say portable environments. At my work for years, we've used Qt or Qt,
Right.
which is a famous one. It's native programming, C++, but it's like POSIX compliant. So you build this thing in Qt. It's got a GUI editor if you want to use that, and then
I think we use the same thing at my work.
it compiles under Linux, under Mac, under Windows, no problem. I don't know about about Android. Yeah, I guess maybe nowadays, I don't know, but this seems to be like a future sort of evolvement from that sort of Qt and Qt Creator is this a native IDE building environment. I guess you could use other languages too, but maybe Qt has Python embedding, or what do you call it, attachments. But this system is maybe, I don't know if you've had it. It's new. It's maybe a little bit more evolved than the Qt environment. It's like the next level.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what you would say?
Qt is a UI toolkit. I've done a lot of work with Qt under Python for my ROS work. So Qt is built on Java and Java's promise of write once, run anywhere.
But it's not just Java. The whole Qt has native. Qt Creator is a complete POSIX build environment for code.
Okay.
For complete code. Everything, the full stack all the way down to to driver level, well, to basically any code you want. And then there's a UI portion of Qt has a user interface development, set of classes or whatever and all that are portable to all the platforms. But underneath, there's a whole set of fundamentals: Qt list, Q list, of all the data structures you ever want in computer science. So you can build full apps, full complete apps that will build natively to all that, and then if it builds with the Qt classes, if you stick to those, then it's highly portable. Or you stick to then it will build under Mac and Windows and all that. Because as then you have to install that Qt and build environment on those different machines. But in other words, it's much more than UI. It grew, but This new system you're talking about seems like it's a bit more easy to use and
It was a lot of fun.
beginners and
Yeah.
stuff.
It was fun enough that I was working on work stuff after hours, like that kind of fun.
Yeah. So,
I
yeah,
will install it when I get home.
yeah, but I'm thinking, yeah, for me, it's like I never installed Qt at home. It was only for work because it's like too much overhead. But this system is like something you can install at home and you won't have that kind of headache. You know?
Yeah, Ben, are you having fun with it yet?
Oh, yeah.
Flutter stuff?
You already got him on involved.
One of us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, yeah, thanks, and I'll have to keep you posted as it progresses.
All right.
All right, and you just learned about it a month ago, or?
Yeah.
All right, so, just a quick reminder, if anybody online has a show and tell, let me know in chat, so I can add you to the list. And, now, the next up is Chris. You're up.
Have you enabled screen sharing? I can't
Yes.
screen share.
Oh, yeah, you should be able to. So it looks like you are, okay, so you're using the web version. I don't know a lot about the web version.
So I could try to leave and come back.
Yeah, so screen sharing is available through the, I don't know, is that a limitation of the web client?
No,